halfway point of the season and the cavalry has arrived. Will it be enough to save Perth Glory's season? Another loss on the road for the Perth Glory women, and stinking hot days and balmy nights. That means just one thing. The NPLWA Night-Series returns this weekend. Welcome to the only podcast with more grifters than a Donald Trump inauguration. This is the Far Post Perth Podcast presented by ID Athletic. Don't forget, now's the time to book your orders for 2025. Visit 84 House Street in Osborne Park, or visit idathletic.com. Also, big thank you to Dino Julbic and the team at Trio Homes. If you're looking to build, redesign, or renovate, visit triohomes.com.au. Plenty to talk about. A bit of a lull as far as what's happening for the men's team. We'll talk about the women's team. Plenty to chat about, transfers and everything that's happening throughout the January window. With me on this episode, James Renton. Welcome back, mate.
Thank you, Blayne.
And also, we've got Jaxon Bassett. Jaxon, what's going on, mate?
Just enjoying some of the action that we've had over the weekend. It's nice to watch and not worry about the result.
It's cool, wasn't it?
Yeah, you could just sit back and enjoy what the A-League had to offer.
Beyond Blue didn't get a call.
So that?
Beyond Blue didn't get a call.
Very good. Boys, well, let's get into it the only way that we know how. It is the good, the bad, and the ugly, but with a little bit of a twist, because we are going to do the good, bad, and the ugly of the season thus far. So whether it be for the Glory, whether it be across the A-League, it might be a team or a player that stood out across, I guess, the last few months. James, kick us off.
Well, most of mine will have a focus on Glory, but I think for the good, it's the continuing rise in the young Australian talent making moves overseas, whether it be to the UK or to the MLS, as we're seeing with Arith Powell as an example, who has gone, I believe, to Real Salt Lake for a fee that's close to $1 million Australian. And I think just recently we've had Hayden Matthews go to Portsmouth for £1.2 million. So the stock in young Australian players is clearly rising. And what excites me is that we've got, in my view, two very, very good young WA products in Jalen Pearman and Adriano Labib. For me, that should be having a starting asking price of at least $1 million, given their current talent and what they're doing in the league right now and what they could do in the future. So, but even just as a more broader point for Australian football, given the fees that we're getting now for our young players, I think it's a really exciting time.
Growing up, this was a big thing because we had that kind of, and everyone talks about the golden generation, but it wasn't just the golden generation. Like, we had players and second tier kind of players that were getting, going onto the world stage and going to some of the biggest clubs in the world and really performing. And some of them went on to play for the Socceroos, and then we had like guys that went on to play for Croatia and a few other countries and everything else like that. Of course, one of the greatest to come out of Australia, if we can claim it, would be Christian Vieri, who of course was one of Italy's greatest footballers, but obviously plied his trade in the early days in Australia. So it's fantastic to see that this trend is, I think it's fair to say, returning. It's been a while since we've actually seen a market like this and the demand like this. And I think it's, for as much as we bitch and whinge about, players and development and all the problems with it, I mean, there's some just fruits that are starting to come because of this. And I'm going to pick an interesting point, and we're going to speak to Kelechi Osunwa a little bit later on from the Perth Football Podcast, and he's going to give us a little bit of insight into this. But there's a generation that has just started to come through and really ply their trade. And we had all the whinging about the old Dutch curriculum and the national curriculum and everything else like that. Well, this is the generation that's just hitting their straps. So, as I said, for all the whinging and bitching and complaining, there's some justification to it all, Jackson.
Yeah, I think what helps as well, and it might not be the best thing for the league, but you could argue that one of the positives of there being a bit less money to throw around is that young players have to be given these opportunities. It's allowing a lot more young players to play in the competition, get minutes, and develop at a faster rate. And there's a whole lot of players who've come through. I had a little list of the players who moved at the beginning of the season. Ben Old went to St. Etienne. Max Ballard has been playing well at Breda. Aaron Kunda made the big move as well. Even our own Daniel Benny off at QPR. So it's good to see these players making moves to quality countries and good leagues as well. It's not as if they're playing in like the small leagues in Asia where it's not, the level isn't as high. It's good that they're playing at a decent level in Europe, which is where I think they're going to develop even more, and hopefully a lot of them can go on to play for the Socceroos in the future.
I spent a night a couple of nights ago watching the Central Coast, the greatest little club in the world documentary that was about their last couple of seasons. And I don't know if you guys have watched it, but it's a fantastic watch, and I recommend everyone to go and have a bit of a look at it if you're interested in your Australian football. But that goes heavily into how they are and were and I believe probably still are the blueprint and probably the model that the other clubs are following as far as let's get these kids up to scratch. Let's get them to a point, and because that is going to drive our sustainability as a football club is not what we can win, because believe it or not, the A-League, you don't get any money for winning trophies. You get money from producing players and selling them on.
Well, look at Adelaide as an example. Look at where they are right now, and touching on to the original rivalry game against Melbourne Victory, to see how the stadium looked, to see the type of football that Adelaide were playing, but importantly, a big core of their talent was young guys. It wasn't just like these superstar marquee players. It was young guys that were leading the way for them and South Australian products. So there's no reason why Glory, as an example, can't follow that model and arguably do it better. That's what we should be striving towards. But just as a more general point, it's good to see the general trajectory of young Australian footballers.
Jackson, what's been good over the last few months, mate? The season thus far?
I'll go back to the goal catalogue. Pretty simple. We've seen some absolute stunners. A lot of people shit on the league, and there are a lot of Euro snobs who compare it to England and La Liga, and obviously some at the same level. But appreciate it and look at some of the talent we've got and look at some of the goals being scored, because I doubt you'll find a league elsewhere in the world that's had as good goals as we've seen this season. There's been 3 bicycle kicks, Bodic's goal on the weekend from long range with the screamer. Yeah, Pierman's goal as well. It's been brilliant, and I think also the competitiveness of the league is a big plus as well. I think in the past with Melbourne City, they've been the runaway leaders, but this season, there's 6 teams who are within 5-6 points of each other. That race for the title for the premiers is really heating up, and I think that's a real positive for the league. It sucks when you've got teams like Brisbane and Perth who are making up the back end and aren't competitive, but when there's multiple teams fighting for the top spots and even for most of the competition, then that's when it thrives.
I'm going to go with my good one. I've been a bit greedy here because I couldn't narrow it down to one over the last few months, but I'm going to go just from the weekend very, very quickly. You mentioned Adelaide and the crowd on the weekend. I mean, that is the blueprint as far as getting bums on seats and creating an atmosphere. It doesn't need to be a big crowd. This is the thing, is that we don't need 80,000 like some other codes do to create an atmosphere and have a bit of a buzz. 14,000 there. Superb.
I'd love for that to come back at HBF.
And Adelaide have absolutely led the way in this regard over the last few years as far as being one of the only clubs to have regular attendances. And don't get me wrong that stadium goes a long way to doing that, but regular attendances that the games actually look very, very full, even if they're not. So that was my one of my goods. A big shout out to the crowds that keep rocking up for the Glory too.
Yeah.
Many people could have just thrown it and said it's all too hard, but sometimes they've been smaller crowds, but they've been crowds and they've been vocal crowds nonetheless. So
there have been plenty of times where we've had bigger crowds than the likes of Mariners and Melbourne City, which is something that, credit to those fans, but for those fans' sake and their mental well-being, I would say it's about time that they get some better performances and a better standard of play, which we're slowly starting to see, I would say, but especially at the start of the season, it was anything but.
My other good was just echoing what you said, is the players and the transfers going overseas, I think is in very good shape at the moment. James, keep going with our bads, mate. What did you think's been bad over the last few months?
Well, I'm just going to make it a bit broader about Glory. The complete disproportion between what was advertised as a product and what was actually delivered. Because, when you had... I can understand you've got the new ownership, you've got a new coach, new players, new staff. You want to hype it up, but what was hyped and then what was delivered. I mean, yes, you can say in the Australia Cup there was promise, but once we watched that first A-League game against Macarthur, it was like, what? What is this? And it was just a disaster of a season, and has set us back at least quite a fair bit. Whereas what we're seeing over the last few weeks, we've started to see a little bit of improvement. Yes, it's been baby steps, but it's something. we're being competitive, which is something that we said wasn't with the team initially. So, I mean, toning down the rhetoric would be a bit more, probably be advised, I would say, and be a bit more pragmatic with what we can achieve rather than trying to. There's nothing wrong with dreaming big, but let's at least set achievable goals that the team has the capacity to reach. Yeah,
I think that's a very, very fair point. Jackson, what's been bad, mate?
I'll throw myself under the bus and say
yourself under the bus. It doesn't work like that usually, mate.
Well, I've got to be honest. Some of my predictions that I made at the beginning of the year have not aged very well, and I'm not even going to wait till the end of the season for them to.
Sack him.
I'll give you these three actually, and you can tell me which one is the worst out of these three. So, I had Glory in fourth at the beginning of the year. I did buy into the hype at the beginning of the year, but obviously we know how that's turned out.
Whoops.
So, it gets worse with the Premier League. I had Spurs and Man U both in the top four, and that has, that's pretty diabolical. And maybe even worse than that, I had Forest going down as well.
Get him gone.
I think the thing with Forest, like at the beginning of the year, they'd always been one of the teams that had been around that bottom four, and they were kind of just. Yeah. I remember Villa a few years ago as well. They were teetering in that race, and then they got out of it and had that massive jump. And Forest have had that this year. So yeah, I don't think any of those are going to be turning around anytime soon.
The Kiwi bird camp is Chris Wood's absolutely flying at the moment, isn't he?
Doing pretty good.
Yeah, he's absolutely gone mad. I'm going to carry on with my bad. I mentioned that Adelaide and Auckland were kind of leading the way as far as their crowds, but crowds in big markets, where the hell are you Melbourne Victory fans and Sydney FC fans and
could even throw Wanderers
fans as well? Like, I get...
You can't shit on, just to cut you off very quickly, for Wanderers fans as an example, you can't shit on MacArthur fans for not turning up, only for you guys to not rock up as well.
No, exactly right. And they're very, very different circumstances as well. I mean, there's 2 million people out in Sydney's West. And I know that they've had issues, but I mean, Perth's got issues, but I mean, we've still got a fair core that's rocking up. Melbourne City could probably be thrown in there as well.
They should be.
Yeah.
Because they play really good football with good young players, yet I know I might get a bit of stick at this, but they're not really an authentic club.
No.
So, I mean, that's a bit of an obvious statement, of course, but, Glory are very lucky that we've got a proud heritage and very, very loyal members and fans that are willing to put up with a lot of crap.
Yep. No, so that's my my bad there, but just the big markets just not leading the way, and Adelaide and Auckland are leading for me. So, what's ugly, James?
Both Perth and Brisbane, to be honest. The whole rhetoric of rebuild has been coming out of those two clubs for a long, long, long time, and it just gets boring. And I think I can't remember which person, someone in the A-League media that had a go at it, and it was like, okay, there's a rebuild, but what exactly are you trying to build? Are you incentivizing fans to get behind? Where you can say, we need 3 windows to get things sorted, or lots and lots of transfers. I mean, Glory fans have always heard next year is going to be the year where we sort our
But Zakovic said that when he was at Perth as well.
He said that when he was at Perth. But also Richard Garcia said that. And I've got nothing against Richard, but it was also that we're in a rebuild, and fans have been hearing rebuild, and it's like you've been oscillating between 9th and 12th. And people thought under Dave Zrulich, it was like, well, we might actually see a jump, maybe not into the finals, but maybe automatic qualification for the Australia Cup. But what we saw as a starting point for Perth this season was really poor. And, credit to Brisbane, they got their first win of the season against Sydney FC. But for their fans as well, they'd be wanting to see far more progression on and off the pitch.
I reckon it's got to be a really tough space, Jackson, to try and, I guess, work in the salary cap. You've got to work in contracts. You've got to work in all these different. It's like the old meme with the equations going in front of Zach Galifianakis before he plays a hand of poker or whatever it is. But that's literally what it's like. So, I mean, you get to a certain point, and if you have a look, I might not be right with this. I'd have to go back and have a look at the figures. Just my gut feeling would probably tell me that sides that keep the core at least together for multiple years are generally more successful sides.
Yeah, that's not really a surprise. I think that's true. I mean, it's hard to be consistent and be at the top when you're going through change year on, year out. And And I know it's difficult for clubs like Glory and Brisbane, who it seems like they're just turning over players year on year, but it gets to a point where talk is cheap if there's no action. You can rattle on and on about rebuilds and next year, but if next year doesn't come around, then all that talk is just for nothing. So, I mean, at least we're seeing some action now with the Glory, and hopefully Brisbane are on that track as well if they can repeat what they did on the weekend against Sydney.
Keep us going with your ugly, mate.
I'll just put in the Glory for their 2024 as a whole, and this is for the men and the women. 4 wins in the calendar year for the men, just the 2 for the women, and 3 of those, 6, were in January and February. So to have 3 wins in 10 months, and I know there's the break in the middle, as far as on-field goes, that's just simply not good enough.
That's pitiful.
Yeah, that is pretty poor. And I know we've mentioned a lot about the men's struggles, but unfortunately the women are in kind of the same boat. They really fell away in the back half of the previous season, and this season just haven't quite got it together. I know today they had quite a few injuries and suspensions to deal with, but it just hasn't been good enough for them.
Yep. No, I don't think anyone could disagree with that.
That was the thing, because last season the women's team, that they started so good, and then I think once it hit 2024, it just went.
Yeah.
So
no, interesting times. I'm going to. I think you mentioned it, Jackson, but I'm going to have a bit of a rant. But just idiots that know nothing about the A-League bagging it. And let's be honest, they usually play 6th Division Sundays, and struggle to put their foot through a ball, for Christ's sake. But it's rubbish. I don't watch it, but it's rubbish.
I watch the Premier League. Bro.
Yeah, it's got boring now. You can't argue with these people, because no matter how many stats you bring out that suggest that it is one of the more entertaining leagues in the world, they just don't want to listen. But
they'll come around.
Maybe they will. Hopefully they do. Boys, thank you very much for that. We're going to take a bit of a break. On the other side of this, we're going to speak to Kelechi Osunwa. He's been good enough to join us, and we'll have a bit of a chat ahead of the NPL Night-Series, and maybe even a little bit of a snapshot at what's 2025 in the local leagues looks all about. So we'll be right back after this. You're on the Far Post Perth Podcast.
Tired of the same old cookie-cutter home designs? Dreaming of a space that truly reflects you? Then it's time to talk to the team at Trio Homes. Whether you're looking to build your dream home, redesign your current space, or simply renovate, Trio Homes is committed to unique designs, local personalised service and quality workmanship. And with former Perth Glory star Dino Julbich at the helm, you'll know you're getting passion and dedication built into every project. Discover the difference with Trio Homes. Visit triohomes.com.au.
What a run! This could be the one! It's in! That's what it's all about! And when it comes to sports gear that helps you perform your best, ID Athletic has the winning formula. From grassroots clubs to elite athletes, ID Athletic provides high-quality sporting apparel, screen printing, embroidery, and made-to-order promotional products. Proud sponsors of the Far Post Perth and passionate supporters of WA community sport. Visit ID Athletic at 84 Howe Street, Osborne Park, or online at idathletic.com. ID Athletic. Build your identity.
Welcome back to the Far Post Perth Podcast. Big thank you to ID Athletic and, of course, Trio Homes. Gents, we kind of, plenty of A-League still going on, but we start to gear up for the local leagues, and the NPL Night-Series begins this weekend. I love the Night-Series. It's these balmy nights. You can go to a local ground, $10, see 2 games, have a burger, have a couple of beers, catch up with everyone.
Have a bit of fun.
It's really, really good. So when, I really encourage everyone to get down, and they get really good crowds as well, because you've got kind of 4 times, teams rather than just 2 teams to follow down there. So it's a really, really good time. And one man who knows plenty about it has been good enough to join us on the Far Post Perth, and it is Kelechi Osunwa from the Perth Football Podcast. Welcome, mate.
Guys, an absolute pleasure to be here. I am thoroughly enjoying being here and listening. And can I just say, as someone who is part of a league where nobody watches but claims that it's absolute garbage, I understand exactly how you feel.
NPL's all right, mate. Don't worry about that.
Honestly, NPL is so good. Well, like when Pearman scored that goal, I was like, he's done like 6 of these.
That's my boy.
Yeah, it was so good.
Mate, let's have a bit of a chat about things because I did mention the NPL Night-Series. I'm sure you echo my kind of thoughts because it is just a good time to get into the football. You kind of ease your way in. You can have a beer and everything else. Sundays hasn't started, so you get a good kind of a good vibe. And, plenty happening this weekend.
Mate, you're absolutely spot on about that. Like when you go to these Night-Series games, everyone's kind of like happy. The weather's really, really good. You could be there in shorts at 9 o'clock. It doesn't really like feel weird or anything like that. And the fact that you get the classic Brucey bonus where you get 2 games that are happening, all the teams that are there. So for us on the podcast side, it's perfect to like try to get a bit of scope for all the teams. But at the same time, it's good to see old friends, good to see old people that you didn't meet last year. Or and at the same time, like you said, it's always good to just grab a Basie burger or something like that and keep things going.
Jackson just talked about how his predictions have gone rubbish from the pre-season, mate. You're not going to make the same mistake with the Night-Series, are you?
Nah, especially because they put our like predictions literally in order.
Oh.
And so last year we did the same with like Florida after seeing them in the Night-Series, and they were absolutely honking in the Night-Series. And then they like rattle off 5 wins in every weekend. I'm getting a video being like, straight away. So no predictions this year. We're gonna wait right to the end and just do a glass half full, glass half empty, or like dodgy eye kind of like emoji thing to make that our ratings for the season.
We'll talk about, I guess, the Night-Series a little bit more. We'll go through some fixtures and so on and so forth. But it's an interesting time for WA football. It feels like there's a massive growth. It almost feels in a way that we're a little bit scrambling on how do we deal with this growth now, particularly at participation level. But obviously, with an election coming up, we've got politicians who want us to spruik what they've doing for each club in their local electorate. But how do you see the state of the game locally now?
Mate, it's a tremendous time. The participation numbers are really, really cool, especially from the women's perspective as well. I mean, I spoke to some people in Football West last year and they were saying their biggest concern is how do we get them all the facilities so that, if they don't quite get what they need this year, they still turn up and have what they need next year, because that's the biggest issue. But aside from that, it's been terrific. You think about the numbers, you think about the players that we're getting through and developing. Like you think about the players playing for the Perth Glory men's and the women's. There's a lot of local players who are literally plying their trade in the NPL, watching them score goals, and then the next thing you know, they're scoring goals off of a cameo in the likes of Caitlin Douglas and things like that. So I think the game's in a really good place. I think from like a development perspective, I think the product is fairly good, but I think we all have to just kind of take a pinch of salt and just accept that we are a bit of a development league. And like that is the NPL. It is a very young league. It skews very, very young. You look at the players who are coming through to our leagues, it skews very young as well. So once you take that pinch of salt and understand that this is a development league, then you're likely to be in a place where you are legitimately watching players who, for example, James Overy, all of a sudden we're now watching someone who is playing for Man United, or Daniel Benny, who got voted in our Coaches Team of the Year, is now playing in England as well.
Why do you think, maybe a bit of a hard question, so to speak, but why do you think, particularly over the last 12 months, we've seen players like Jalen Pym and Adriana Labib and then Daniel Benny, last year James Overy. Why do you think, particularly over the last few years, let's say, compared to a bit earlier on in that sort of COVID period where a lot of young guys got their opportunity at Glory, why do you think we're now starting to see that next level of players sort of assert themselves a little bit sooner rather than some of the other guys who've come in?
Two things. One, the funny one is like the Glory don't have a lot of money, so they get to play the younger players. So that's terrific and good. But the second one is, and I don't think he would like me saying this and giving him all the credit, but the work that John Walmsley did as the previous under-23s coach was ridiculous. There's a video that we put up there with Cook talking about a game that he just played. This was 2023 year, and he had 16 and 15-year-olds playing NPL when he could have had under-23s. And he made a point of saying this is really their first time to play adult football. And there kind of is no point in them playing under 17s because they have all the ball. They don't have to go up against grown men. They don't have to be in different situations. They're used to having the best players and being in the best team. So putting them in a situation where they are playing against grown men, the tactics are different, and you're kind of changing the ideas towards what suits them. Like you can see that absolutely come to fruition when you look at the likes of Majak Adumi, who all of a sudden has just dropped off the planet and is still an Australian under 23, right? You got Adriana Labib, who I need to tell a story about him later on. And you think about Benny, you think about Overy, you think about Kwa and Go as well. And I think whether we like it or not, the NPL is kind of sort of working. Like you were saying earlier, Blayne, the idea was to create this generation of young, talented Australian footballers, and it might have been a detriment because we're not having older senior professionals there. But at the same time, when you're looking at these players who are coming through, like, it's huge. I think the last big player to have this much fanfare that was a local kid was what, De Silva?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, maybe Italiano.
Yeah.
Yep. No, fair enough.
Yeah, we've seen those guys like Pammon and Wolf Freeney get a go, and even El Lincoln for the women's teams, and they've come through this season. Looking ahead, who are the guys or girls that you've got your eye on who you think will be playing in the league in the next year or two?
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm going to have to go and look at the Glory players this season and just get a better look and feel of them, because they have just been playing that little bit younger. I think that there's one player in the Glory women who is going to be a star, and that's Ishkia Brooking. She obviously was the record holder for the youngest appearance. They may or may not have been questions about her going to play for a Premier League team in England, but could not get things sorted out because she was very, very young. But that is the level of talent that you are like looking at and dealing with right now in WA, and that's someone who's 16 years old right now. So that's the level of talent that we've kind of currently got in WA. I'll go back and have a look at some of the younger players for the Glory, because it's just been a huge transitional thing. And if you go back and you look at that Glory side, they ended up having a whole bunch of like disruptions that came through. So Adrian Olibib was playing for the Glory this year in the under-23s. Faisal turned up and played a couple games for the Glory. The less about that, the better.
But I mean, I'm just going to pick you up on that. But that was all within the rules.
Yeah,
as
no,
much
for
as
sure.
everyone
For
winched and complained.
Yeah.
That was all within the rules.
Yeah, there was a little bit of knifey spooty there where they had a friendly game and they brought a bunch of Perth players on trial to play that friendly game so that they had a little bit more room for other players to play the other game. But sure, that happened. But yeah, so there is a lot of talent, and I reckon by the end of this year, every single season we've done the coaches team of the year, and the coaches have picked a Glory player every year. And in our first season, it was Kalama Jakadumi. The next season, it was Daniel Benny. And last year it was Pearman. So every single year that we have had the awards, the coaches have actually put their hands up and said, we reckon this person from the Glory is going to be mustered, and they've been mustered so far.
I was just going to jump in. I don't expect you to talk on behalf of clubs or the Glory, but as someone who's got their ear to the ground, there's been a lot of work. I've kind of had this verified by both the Glory and clubs into trying to fix that relationship. Where do you feel that relationship is as far as working cohesively to make sure that there is these clear pathways for these youngsters?
I think there's a couple of things there. I think for some of the clubs, as much as the pathway is there, they just want to have a bit more credit. And I think what I noticed on the weekend was as the players' names were coming up in the Auckland game, you could see the badge and the club that they came from. And so, like, it was really nice to see Adrian and Bib and have it say Dianella. So I think, like, things like that are doing a really good way of kind of repairing the relationship between them. I think the big question that will answer that is what happens once what Glory decide to do with their academy and how they want to do their academy, if they're going to do an academy.
So let us know where that's at the moment. Where do you see that actually going, and where's it at currently?
So from my understanding, Glory don't have an academy in the same way as they used to. There is now a Football West academy that has been run in the
old
same...
NTC, essentially.
Yeah, this old NTC, but it's done in a Football Australia remit, so it isn't necessarily simply a Football West thing. I'm really excited about it. I was a little bit apprehensive about it, but then I sat down, saw some of the coaches that they're going to have in place, saw some of the identity and fieriness about them towards being really clear about a pathway that's been made through, and it's kind of been done if you think about Adelaide United and the amount of like talent that they've been just pumping through most recently, they're trying to build through that model as well. So that feels exciting. But I do think when the Glory decide what kind of academy they're going to do, if they are able to take the approach of something along the lines of, hey, we've got these players, or we've identified these players, they're your players, but can we have them a couple nights a week for training, or one night a week for training, and come and play a match for us, and then they're back to being your players because we trust you with their development and we've trusted you to get them this far as well. I think if there is something in that model, then I think it'll go a great way of kind of repairing the relationship, because what it's felt like now, again from the outside looking in, is Glory pick all the best players and then from a 12-year-old all the way looking up, you kind of don't like playing the Glory teams, and now you got to go support the Glory teams on the weekend, and they've just been beating you right the way through, all the way through the grades. So I think that was the perspective that I had.
Do you think this is a bit of a get the crystal ball out and we're looking ahead a little bit, but do you think there's enough reason for fans to be excited over the next 2 to 5 years about the young guys that are going to be coming through, even if they don't make it, let's say, to Glory, but maybe they get poached by an NPL New South Wales or NPL Victoria club?
From an NPL perspective?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the quality of football that we have here, just like the quality of football in the A-League, is a good brand quality of football, right? It is all absolutely relative to the exact level of talent that you have. But the quality of football there is terrific. There are so many academies that's happening right now. Dortmund recently started an academy here, right? So there's so many academies that are out here now. We have, the numbers have never been as high as we have had before. The talent, the structure, everything is in place to develop and get players better. The only thing that we are lacking is the experienced individuals from the UK, from overseas, who come in and kind of give you that added bit of polish. That's the kind of only thing that we're lacking. And I would actually like to have a conversation one day, I'm not sure with who, but to talk about this idea that you have to kind of leave WA to kind of make it. And, you know, if you are a young person and you just want to play football and have that career, then absolutely, like, you get $600 a week kind of thing. But there are so many players who've stayed in WA and who have made it. We are looking at players right now who are all WA players who are now playing in the A-League. Yes, they're 11th for both the men's and the women's sort of thing. But you don't necessarily have to leave here, especially when the talent is here. So if we can get to this place where we're understanding what the talent looks like and having people stay here, then that'll give us even more quality in our league. And the last thing I'll say about that is there are so many times when you tell a player to leave WA, and they might be a player who has a lot of time on the ball, and now they're out in Victoria playing for a team in the mid to lower half of the table, and they're just out of possession team, now just doing doggies. How has that helped their development, so to speak?
Do you think there should be any countries that we should be looking to model our youth development on? I know that's a very broad question, but
there's quite a few, right? Like, if you think about the infrastructure and the way that Iceland did it, where it was, we're going to get the most elite players, keep them in a really big environment, and help them play and help them grow and help them develop. That's a big one. You kind of look at like what Germany used to do back in the what Germany used to do back in just before like Ozil kind of made it in the 2010s. Look at what countries like Serbia and Croatia do. When you think about those countries, and I think this might be the biggest one, is the access to getting started, or the barrier to getting started. There is none. This is some of the remnants of like the communist regime. Is if you want to play, you can play. Whereas here,
bit more of a process.
It not only is it more of a process, but like if you want to play for one of the better academies, you better be a Western Suburbs kid. And so like you see the likes of like a Adriana Bibb, who was someone who plays for Dianella, like those are very rare stories to come through. But the vast majority are, it's expensive to start playing, it's expensive to get all the equipment, it's expensive to do 2 halves or to do pro football training or all these other things. So there's a legitimate barrier of entry. And when you think about this is a working class sport. And the fact that like you are now in the situation where you're limiting the amount of talent because of money, like AFL would never do that.
I just wanted to shift it away from the players a little bit and focus more on the league itself, because there's been a lot of talk about the national second division. When we on the podcast here, we've had a lot of chat about it.
Sorry, Neil.
Let's go out to you, Neil.
Obviously, they've got the Champions League format, which is going to have an NPLWA team in it. How do you think they will be competitive compared to the other NPL teams? And do you see a world where if the second division does progress and we do see it, do you think that the NPLWA teams are going to be in a good position to actually survive in the league financially?
Financially, I'm not too sure about, but in terms of competitively, I think absolutely. I think we have had absolute moments where we've seen WA teams perform and overperform. In my, like, just watching the NPL as far as I have, Bayswater made the grand final and lost to a Blacktown team that were full of A-League players. They lost 2-0, and there were situations there where they could have won the game. Perth beat Heidelberg.
Correct.
Just last year, Olympic Kingsway beat a team in Brisbane and then just narrowly lost
Adelaide, wasn't it?
To Adelaide. So the talent is there. And again, like when you have those situations where it is like an any given Sunday kind of thing, like I would back, if you give us a game at home under the lights, and those are the best games because all of WA kind of comes together and the crowd comes together as well. And so we end up in the situation where we've got 40,000 people who are all backing one team, which we never really usually like get to do. And these aren't just like a team; these are like your mates as well. So I think there is like that'll happen. But when you think about it from the macro perspective, we just aren't as competitive because they've got pokies, they've got money, they've got more people, and they can afford to pay more. So that's where we kind of struggle. But again, any given Sunday where you have the best of WA playing the best of other states, we are more than competitive.
Kel, one thing that I've had a little bit of a bugbear around for a while is crowds and why we don't get more to our NPL fixtures. No, well, I mean, I'm sure that everyone has a little bit of the same kind of theory at times, and I've talked to people at clubs, and I've talked to people at Football West, and in fact, there's a key pillar as part of the Football West strategy under the umbrella of Football Australia, which includes fans and crowds. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that kind of filter into NPL or the local competition. What do you feel that we have to do to be able to get more people to local football? Is it as simple as just letting people know it's on? Is there more work to be done by the clubs themselves? Is this up to Football West? Because that's also been a conjectural kind of situation where there's a little bit of finger pointing as far as whose actual role it is to get people's through the gates and bums on seats. Yeah,
I think Football West need to kind of be given an easier run on this because they're just there to be the administrators when it comes to doing like the full-on promoting and all that kind of stuff. It kind of doesn't necessarily fall on them, like so to speak. If you think about the Premier League, they have Sky and they have all these other institutions who are promoting their game, and they do like a little bit of stuff like from the Premier League, so to speak. I think the production value needs to be a lot better. My buddy Sean Fry, who used to do commentary there, he now does commentary for basketball, and he's like, buddy, there's 500 people at every game. Yeah. It's super family friendly. It's really easy to get to. Why aren't we getting that? Why aren't we getting the same? And to compare apples with apples, why aren't we getting the same as NBL1 West? Why aren't we getting the same as Waffle? I think Waffle would probably be the better comparison, but again, like there's a huge cultural difference and divide with why people go to Waffle. There's a huge cultural difference and divide towards why people come to football, and a lot of the times, unfortunately and fortunately, it's been this kind of ethnic pull towards it. And then when you're not having that kind of ethnic pull, you're then now needing to go out into the community and do a better job of going into the community. And I think clubs like Inglewood and Sorrento are doing a really good job of going out into the local community and saying, hey, you live here, we're going to drop pamphlets in here and tell you that this is something you can come to, and it's a $10 thing. Right? Yeah. So I think doing more things like that will go a long way, because you can't unfortunately just rely on the people from the old country who have been there for years and years and years. Because unfortunately, at a certain stage, and this is what someone told me, he says, at a certain stage we all become Australian, and so like once you become Australian, what's the reason to actually go to these? Like, what's the reason to go to the club? Right? Like, you're now Australian, and if it's not for like the old school music or the raki or whatever, like, then you need to have a reason to go there. So I think we need to do a better job from the club's perspective to promote. I think like something Perth does really well is even the halftime challenge. Yeah. The crossbar. Like, these are things that you want to have people get me on next time, mate. You need to be able to get to speak to people where they are at. I think the other thing, and this is something that we can have a talk out of off air, is there's just a lot of clubs in such a small, tiny area. Absolutely. And so now all of a sudden, like, you're diluting the amount of people who are going to go to these games. So if you think about like Olympic Kings, where they've got Wanneroo right next to them, they've got Balga next to them, they've got East Perth there as well. That inner north with Perth, Inglewood, Bayswater, Floreat, you could probably throw a blanket over all of them. You literally have Balcatta and Stirling, like, throw a rock from one to the other. Yeah. So you're seeing there, and again, there's reasons for that, and we don't want to diminish the reasons for the identity there. But if they all like football, then all of a sudden they're going to one game, and now we're getting 200 people instead of 100 people, so to speak. One club that I feel does it very well is Mandurah. Oh, they do it so well. Because they've got that point of difference that it's us versus the rest, the Northern Bastards. Yep. Do you know what I mean? It's a little bit like that, and it works. It works. And you go down there, there's
all kinds of let's just say it's a very, very Anglo
they suddenly
based club.
A few years ago.
They've still got him.
They still got him. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they brought him in and added a bit of spice.
Yeah.
And they also have like food trucks coming.
Yeah.
They've got the bouncy castle that comes in. They make it like a full on day. And they kind of layer it up as well. So if you turn up, you can watch the men's and the women's.
And it's great. You go to as an opposition player, and 8-year-old, kids fresh off the boat from England are just hurling abuse at you. It's talk about bringing the old country, Kel.
Where else would you rather be?
No, but I like it. I like that little bit, as long as it doesn't cross the line or anything else like that. But I mean, it's that tribalism that gets a lot of people involved in football to begin with. It certainly was a pulling factor with me.
Well, that's the thing. It's like not to sound too snobby, but when you look at, let's say, the bigger NPL clubs over east, like a Sydney United or a South Melbourne, and you see, obviously they're clubs with a lot of history, but it's like it'd be great to see that sort of in the future. I don't know when, but to see that level of support for the NPL clubs. I mean, because like you're saying with manager, I mean, imagine like got the 8-year-old kids yelling abuse at you, but just that whole experience as a whole is something that should incentivize a lot of people to just get out and give it a go and experience it.
Absolutely, yeah, get down there. And it's cost of living crisis. It's $10 to get in. You can get yourself
chips.
a beer for $8, $9, $10, unless you're at the Sam Kerr Football Centre, Kel. But you'll be paying
Venues West,
double
thank you very much, Venue West.
But I mean, it's an affordable night out.
Yeah.
If you wanted to take the full family out, and plenty of people do, I mean, just get a picnic rug, sit on the grass, and have a sandwich and a beer, and it's just a top-notch afternoon,
And
Jackson.
if you want to be hurled abuse at, you can always go to Alfred Skeet Reserve. They're terrific. The atmosphere again, and
Good fun.
One, their crowd is terrific.
Yeah.
Two, the social media that they're doing is really well.
Yep.
And they're another club who's done a really good job of understanding that their population is growing all through that Armidale area, and they're doing a really good job of making sure that club is accessible for everybody. And you watch, they'll become a big powerhouse very, very soon.
I've heard a few people complain about Glory's prices and memberships. So if you don't want to spunk up the money for membership, may as well go to the NPL because you're going to see good quality.
I enjoyed a couple years ago when Glory had their pre-season game against Stirling Macedonia, and we were sitting right among me and a mate. We were sitting right among the locals, and it's like the atmosphere that you get and just that vibe.
It's good fun.
It's for me as a young fan, and Jackson as well. It sort of does emulate what would feel like an old school sort of experience, and it's not something that we get at a Glory game. And so there's definitely plenty of reasons for more people to get involved.
I got a question for you guys.
Yeah.
Just going back onto the topic of the players. I watched that MacArthur game at the start of the season where they had an 18-year-old and a 20-year-old at centre back.
Yep.
Yes.
And we haven't seen the 20-year-old since. And he's an Australian under 23 international.
Yeah.
So like and Majak Adumi was terrific towards the back end of last season where he got a couple goals and he kind of was staking his claim there. And we've only seen Pierman most recently in these last few weeks. And the conversations that we had in our group chat was, hey, this guy was absolutely mustard all through the NPL season and was a key factor. Everybody talks about Faisal being the difference. Faisal wasn't the difference in that another game. It was Pierman, I'll tell you that right now. And so what has been the player development like for these youth guys? Because it feels like the start of the season, there absolutely wasn't any. And it was kind of like, we've just thrown you in there and try to see if you can swim kind of thing. And now it feels like there's a little bit more that's happening, but at the same time, we haven't seen like Magic's come back and be part of the squad or team so far.
I think in my perspective, when you look at the relationships that some of these young guys are building up with, let's say Labib and Tommy Murchler. And like I had a mate that was at the Auckland game, and I think after every attack, Tommy would always be going over to Adriano to give him little details, little bits of advice. And we've seen Adriano grow this season. He's always been someone for me that's had a lot of potential, but he's really taken it by the throat and he's gone for it. Same with Pierman. I think we had a chat with one of the staff members after I think it was the Western game, and he said to us that Tags and Pierman have a really good understanding with how they play in training. And I think having that sort of connection with a senior player has been something that I've at least been wanting to call out, because I think I might have mentioned that in the meeting with Ross and Stan last month. I was like, well, from September 21 to 24, only Adelaide have had a bigger proportion of players under 21 that have had a share of the minutes than us. So we've clearly given a lot of young guys a go, but we haven't thrown them in the ideal environment. And that's why I said to even Stan, I was like, well, sign some guys that are going to help these guys, and ideally we can fast track their progress, because look at how Labib's doing. He's been fantastic. And Pierman also.
I think some of it comes down to the manager's preferences as well.
Yeah.
So I remember a couple of seasons ago when we had Zadkovic, he was playing Bodnar, and Kolakovsky was nowhere to be seen. And the following season, Kolakovsky comes through and plays well, and then Bodnar's nowhere to be seen. And even in that MacArthur game, Labib started, and then we didn't see him for months. And then he gets a crack of games, and with a different partner, with more experience around him, and he's been thriving in that role.
Who would have thought that having a nice, experienced head and shoulders next to someone who was raw and talented would actually go a long way?
Majex was also playing out of position in that MacArthur game also. So to sort of not show what he can do, because even under the Stadge man last season, Majex and Darryl Latchman were forming a very good partnership. And even on, I think, Hour of Glory, Majex paid a lot of tribute to what Latchman was doing, especially in the sense of build-up play and the amount of information he'd be giving him. So I think it's a missed opportunity that we haven't seen more of Majex this season.
Kel, let's have a bit of a look at the night series before we let you go. It's all happening this weekend. You've got Group A, Group B, it's all over the shop. Don't take us through the full fixtures, but everyone can head over to the Football West site and grab them. But I guess, what are you looking forward to? And, of course, with the promotion, we've got Sorrento back in it and a few other things going on. But how are you seeing the night series?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the night series. Again, it's one of those ones where it can be anything and nothing, depending on what the coaches kind of feel about it. So I'm not going to get fooled again like I did last year. Floreat don't take it seriously. Balcatta don't take it seriously. Western Knights don't quite take it seriously. Bayswater take it absolutely seriously. So I'm excited to see what Bayswater look like as a closet Bayswater fan. Because they've been doing some really big spending. There's a bit of transition that's happened there with Matty Sparrow that's gone there. I'm interested to see what Vernals and Armidale look like. Again, Pete Yorkobs had a great season, and he ended up having a couple games with the Perth Glory to try to see if he could actually make it into the squad. The Perth Glory has got a new coach in Joe Heath, so interesting to see if he kind of still keeps it towards that. Yeah, we know in the 23s it will play some 15, 16 and 17-year-olds. I'm interested to see what Perth Red Star look like, because there's been a lot of talk about them off the field stuff, and they've lost a big-time midfielder in Declan Hughes, who's someone who's been voted in the Team of the Year from the players and from the coaches every season as well. The games start this weekend, and you can see them at Dorrien Gardens on Saturday at 6:30. We have Olympic Kingsway.
Friday at Dorrien Gardens. And then Saturday at Armidale.
My bad. And then Olympic Kingsway take on Freo, and in Perth, of course, take on Perth Red Star as well. Big kind of start to it. To get started. Olympic Kingsway don't have Joe Knowles, who again former A-League player as well. So
did he go back to Oakley?
He's gone back to Oakley. Yeah. And so we'll see what that side looks like. But they've also just gone and signed a few former Perth Glory guys. Lat Matiang, one of them as well. Absolute monster. He's kind of joined them, and I think it's Jaden Gorman.
That does ring a bell.
Oh yeah, I think
just
go somewhere over East. Can't remember where.
Yeah. So I think he's gone there as well. Women's night series doesn't start anytime soon, so it's still quite a fair bit away. I'm really looking forward to this season, because it feels like there is enough transition and continuity at certain teams that I don't think that there's a favourite. Like last year was a clear-cut favourite with Joe Knowles and Liam Boland joining Olympic Kingsway, thinking they were favourites. And then you think about what's happened with the Red Star as well, the transition there. So sneaky people that I really want to see is Sterling. I thought Sterling ended the season very, very well. Yep. Argo Muwich, again, who was a former Glory coach, he had them playing some really attractive stuff, and they were really unlucky to go out on penalties late last season. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they look like under the full pre-season. And, of course, Perth SC with a full proper pre-season with Kenny Lowe as well. I think they're another, keep your eyes out for them, because it's not often that you see Perth in the bottom half for multiple years. And when you look about the teams who've won the title, I think it's only 7 teams since 1990, and they're one of those teams, and they probably have that pedigree there as well.
No, beautiful stuff. Kel, we'll get you back on before the season proper, mate, but looking forward to all your coverage of the night series. Where can people grab the pod, keep up to date with everything?
They can grab the pod at the Perth Football Podcast. Before we go, can I tell that quick little bit
story? Yep.
So last season in the night series, which is another good reason why you need to go down to watch a night series, we're watching Armidale play the Perth Glory. And it's Magix and Majakadumi and Labib at centre half, and they're just destroying and smashing everybody, right? And the old Matilda's coach Alan Stadgett is there, and he's watching, and he's listening to us just talk about how calm and composed Magix is, and he turns to us and goes, "Boys, that young guy next to him, he's got everything. But what? He's like, Labib has got absolutely
that right?
everything.
That's a big
What an
and
endorsement. Yeah.
and he says, if that kid wants it, he's got a minimum 50 games for. He's got a minimum of 50 games for the Socceroos. He says, and I was like, what's he doing? Like, it's different. He goes, you see how he's playing now, where he's just like super aggressive, does not care, like smashing into players, composed on the ball, quick, real decisive. He says he's doing that here, and he also does it with the first team boys as well. There is no fear in this kid.
Wow.
And he just really, really wants to work hard. So it was really cool for me being there. Again, Auckland lost, unfortunately, but I was sat next to his parents, and just seeing them be like, this is everything that we've kind of been working for and looking for. And just, I had a friend of mine we just had an interview with, who's the coach in New Zealand, and he left the game being like, that Labib guy. I was like, yeah, dude, like, I've been told he's going to play 50 games for Australia if he wants
Just
to.
as a final point on Labib, he's got such a good head on him. Like, even after the Western game, he came over to see a few of the guys, and I just said, like, you know, mate, super player.
And the thing is, the fact that he takes that same attitude with the...
He's a winner.
Yeah. Just that takes the same attitude with the first team players in the Glory, but also with the NPL guys. Yeah. It's mustard, man.
Very lucky to have him.
Awesome. Kel, thank you very much for jumping on, mate. Really appreciate you giving us some time.
Thank you so much, guys.
What a run! This could be the one! It's in! That's what it's all about! And when it comes to sports gear that helps you perform your best, ID Athletic has the winning formula. From grassroots clubs to elite athletes, ID Athletic provides high-quality sporting apparel, screen printing, embroidery, and made-to-order promotional products. Proud sponsors of the Far Post Perth and passionate supporters of WA community sport. Visit ID Athletic at 84 Howe Street, Osborne Park, or online at idathletic.com. ID Athletic. Build your identity.
Tired of the same old cookie cutter home designs? Dreaming of a space that truly reflects you? Then it's time to talk to the team at Trio Homes. Whether you're looking to build your dream home, redesign your current space, or simply renovate, Trio Homes is committed to unique designs, local personalised service, and quality workmanship. And with former Perth Glory star Dino Julbich at the helm, you'll know you're getting passion and dedication built into every project. Discover the difference with Trio Homes. Visit triohomes.com.au.
Big thank you to Kelechi Osunwa. Make sure you check out the Perth Football Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, check them out on social media. Give them a like, give them a follow. Plenty of great coverage coming throughout the 2025 local league season. Boys, let's have a quick look ahead to this weekend. In one word, we've got a bonus bit of Thursday night football, which is awesome this weekend. Adelaide taking on Auckland. That is a top-of-the-table clash, so expect another big crowd in Adelaide. Give us your tips.
Entertaining draw.
Entertaining draw, okay.
I'll go Adelaide. They're at home. They're playing well.
Yeah,
so,
I'm going to go Adelaide at home as well. Friday, Melbourne victory, Sydney, the Big Blue.
Boring draw.
You reckon?
Yeah.
I think this is going to be a cracker.
Victory don't inspire me with a lot. I mean, some of the reaction from their fans towards Arthur Dills at full time after the Adelaide game was a little bit unsavoury, but I just don't think he's the guy for them.
Jackson?
Sydney to bounce back after that loss.
I'm going Melbourne victory at home. Wellington against Central Coast. Wellington,
Knicks.
How the hell did they win that game?
They'll find a way.
Oh.
Ultimate shithouses.
You are going Knicks.
Yep.
Draw. I'm going to go Wellington at home. I'm just not quite getting enough out of Central Coast, even though they did win last weekend. Perth travels to Newcastle 2 p.m. Saturday.
Glory win.
Glory win. Revenge time, you reckon?
Got to be.
2-2 draw.
Damn it.
I'm going to be really interested. I'm going to go glass half full. I'm going to go with a Perth. I'm going to go with a draw, actually. But I'm going to
Wales and tags to sort us out.
I'm going to be really, really interested to see just how they line up and how fit all these new incoming players are. MacArthur, Melbourne City.
A high-scoring draw.
High-scoring draw.
Melbourne City.
Melbourne City. I'm going to go MacArthur. They must have
felt shit.
They'll be burning all week after letting that one go against Wellington. And on the Sunday, Western Sydney against Auckland.
Auckland.
Back it up in the weekend.
Auckland. And can I throw in my bold prediction as well?
Yeah, 2 seconds. We'll get to that. A-League W across the weekend. Tonight saw, of course, Perth go down 4-1 to Western United. Friday, Melbourne victory against Sydney. Double header. Western Sydney against Melbourne City. Adelaide against Western United. Newcastle against Canberra United. Central Coast against Wellington. And Perth back in action. Sam Kerr Football Centre on Sunday as they take on league leaders Brisbane. Jackson, a bold prediction.
They didn't mean to interrupt your flow, but we'll go back to the Western Sydney-Auckland game. It's the battle of the matters. It's Juan versus Max, and they both score.
Woo! How long have you been working on that one for?
I've been waiting since the season started for that one. I've had it in the back pocket.
That's implying Stadge plays him, though.
Even if he comes off the bench, like you saw him, like he put in the cross for the...
He's a gun.
Yeah.
Final thoughts, anyone else? No? I don't have a bold prediction.
I'll be keen to see how the new Japanese players go.
I'm just keen to see how Glory can turn this around, as we said off the top. Will it be the start of
get it done.
Maybe a little bit of a mini revival? Big thank you to you, boys. Thank you very much for jumping on board. Big thank you to you for listening. Don't forget, you can grab this podcast wherever you get all your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, YouTube Music. Don't forget to give us a like, give us a follow on all of the social media. Keep up that interaction. We very much appreciate it each week. Until next time, this has been the Far Post Perth.